I don't have a catchy way to start this off. I don't have some like clever hit you right in the face with a hot take just to get it started on a hot note. Because we're here at the end of the regular season. Pitt is 7-5 overall, 3-5 in the ACC, stumbling towards something. And it might be a lot of things that they're stumbling toward. After a 34-23 loss at Boston College today, completed the sweep, really, of going straight down the toilet after a 7-0 start, an unbelievable finish after an unbelievable start. And Pitt started off 7-0. It looked outstanding. It looked amazing. It looked like they were going to do great. And it all just tanked from there. And I don't know. I know there's a lot to say. I'm trying to bring up a couple other things I need to have open on my computer as we go here. I know there's a lot to say, and we're going to say it all. You know, last year, after the regular season finale at Duke, we went probably about 3 hours with the post-game show. I don't know if we're going to go 3 hours tonight, but there's a whole lot to say in the aftermath of this loss. And I'm letting people kind of filter in. I imagine we're going to have a big crowd tonight. We should have a big crowd tonight because you guys should have a lot to say. And I'm going to let you guys dictate a lot of this conversation. In the chat screen, you jump in the chat with your comments and your questions of what you want to say about Pitt's loss at Boston College tonight, what you want to say about Pitt's season overall. Because while I often kind of push back against, making broad declarations based off of one game or what have you, I mean, I think it's absolutely in order now because we're not just talking about one game. We're talking about 5 games. We're talking about, and maybe those 5 games don't overshadow the first 7, but also maybe they do because there were 5 ACC games. There were a bunch of winnable games in there. Even if you want to tell me SMU was better than Pitt and is better than Pitt, and Pitt's not going to be able to, that just wasn't a game they were going to win. If you want to tell me that Louisville is not as much better than Pitt as SMU is, but good enough and that much better than Pitt that, winning on the road there will be tough. That's fine. But you can't excuse Virginia and you can't excuse, quite frankly, Clemson, and you can't excuse this game today. 3 winnable games that changed this season from 7-5 to 10-2. 3 winnable games. The only games this team had any business losing this season were SMU and Louisville. And there were injuries, and there was bad officiating, and there were bad calls, and all these different things. But when it came down to it, this team had no business losing today. They had no business losing to Virginia, and they should have beat Clemson. They should have, but they didn't. And that's how they end up 7-5. And I'm already starting to rant without even, really getting the thing started. I said I wanted to kind of let people filter in here before we start diving into the comments and questions. You know what I will do before we get going, and I'll get this out of the way before we jump into the Maker's Mark, which is coming in a second. But I do want to tell you real quick, just because time's running out on this, that tonight's episode, this post-game show, is sponsored by Chris Gates Fitness and his online fitness training camp. He has nothing to do with the outcome of tonight's game, but Chris is a huge Pitt fan. He's a longtime supporter of the show, and his training camp membership program is perfect for you if you have health and fitness goals. And what's cool is up until Monday, that's 2 days from now, Monday, December 2nd, Chris is running a massive Black Friday sale where you can get 80% off your first month. Let me tell you a little bit about the program real quick. When you join the training camp, you get access to brand new workout programs every month, so you can take all the guesswork out of your exercise plan. You also get access to weekly coaching calls with Chris in the private training camp community group, where you can get all your questions answered and receive guided support every step of the way. You also get access to exclusive courses about health and fitness, so you can build your knowledge base and know exactly what to do, when to do it to make progress. And most importantly, you'll join a community full of people there to support you every step of the way, so you never feel alone in your journey. The community supports you in your fitness and also gets involved in fun games and challenges to win prizes like free supplements or home gym equipment or Amazon gift cards. And in December, Chris is going to be hosting a bracket poll challenge for college football playoff and NFL playoffs with huge prizes going to the winners. So use the promo code Panther-Lair. Panther-Lair. until December 2nd to sign up for just $10. That's 80% off the monthly price. Go to chrisgatesfitness.com/training camp to learn more and sign up today. It's a great time to get a head start on your fitness goals for 2025. Let Chris and the training camp community help you navigate the holiday season successfully. I feel like I should delay a moment because I can't decide what to make the shot of the day. You know? It's got to be something. And like usually, you know, we talk for a little bit and then we'd hit the bottle. But as our friend John Christofich said, I don't know where he is. I was going to bring up John's comment, but it doesn't matter. He said, hit the bottle. And John, we are. And this might be a multiple shot night. We might go. I'm going to have to pour this one a little bit light just because we might do this again. Look, I don't know what to say after a 5-game losing streak to end this season, after a season that started so prominently. And, you know, injuries, we're going to talk a lot about injuries. We're going to talk a lot about officiating because it sucked tonight. It was terrible. The officials were terrible. The only thing worse than the CW broadcast was the officiating. And the best thing about the CW broadcast was how they kept calling out the officiating. But we will talk about that. Just not right at this moment. I got to decide who to give this shot for. I know what it is. The Backshore Apparel shot of the game is to Nate Yarnell. Nate Yarnell finished this game. Let me see his final stat line, just to be appropriate. 23 of 42, which is about 55%, threw for 296 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 1 interception. But Nate Yarnell got absolutely destroyed in this game. He got knocked around up, down, left, right, every which way. He got beat up, and he was clearly in pain. He was clearly hurting. A week ago, he didn't even practice for the week before he went into the game at Louisville. And so he's obviously dealing with some pain. And you could see it in this game. The wrist, and he's getting knocked around. It seems like every time he drops back, he's getting hit. And that dude just kept getting up, just kept fighting, just kept battling. If you want anything to feel even somewhat good about tonight, and we'll find other things for you to feel good about, is that Nate Yarnell is a trooper, man. He's a warrior for this program and this team. He's stuck with it when multiple players have passed him by, and he still goes out there and gets his ass kicked over and over and over again tonight and still tries to lead this team to win and had a couple chances to do it. And so Nate Yarnell, I don't know if you're 21 yet. You should be. You've been at Pitt for 3 years. I hope you're 21. And I hope when you get back to Pittsburgh, you can do a shot, because right now we're doing a shot for you, sir. The Backshore Apparel shot of the game is for Nate Yarnell, who took way too many shots, more shots than we're going to take in this game tonight. Pop a little something to wash it down, and let me hit you with this. In Pat Narduzzi's 10 years at Pitt, he has had a 4-game losing streak 4 times. In his 10 years at Pitt, 4-game losing streak 4 times. 3 of those last 4 have been in the last 2 seasons. 2 last year, 1 this year. Prior to the year of our Lord 2024, Pat Narduzzi has never had a 5-game losing streak. Not in 2017, when they went 5-7. Not in the COVID year when they went 6-5 and the whole world was upside down. Not last year when they went 3-9. He never had a 5-game losing streak until right now. Hold on, I left my legal pad over there. Sorry, I jotted down notes. Pat Narduzzi has had losing records in the ACC 3 times. 3 times has he had a losing record in ACC play. In 2017, he went 3-5. Last year, he went 2-6. And this year, 3-5. So in 10 seasons, Pat Narduzzi has had 3 losing records in conference play. 2 out of the 3 were the last 2 years. Pat Narduzzi, overall record. This is where the real contrast comes in. 2021-22, Pitt went 20-7 2023-24, 10-14. Literally half the wins that they posted in 2021-22. They have cut it in half. Those 2 years, they won 20 games. The next 2 years, which we're currently in, they've won 10. 2021-22, they had a 12-4 record in ACC games. 12-4. This year, the last 2 years, 5-11. This swoon, I mean, I can't say it's not concerning. And I can sit here and rationalize it all. I can talk it all. I can talk my way through all of it about why they went 3-9 last year and how the lessons were learned from 3-9. And it's so much better because they learned the lessons, and Pat Narduzzi showed he could change and he could switch up and hire a new kind of offensive coordinator, bring in a new kind of offense and all that kind of thing. So 3-9 was really bad and it was unfortunate, but it was a learning experience, and Narduzzi emerged from it a changed coach and he learned lessons. And I can tell you about how this year, 7-5, there are reasons for it. They lost a starting quarterback multiple times. They lost a starting left tackle, and they've had these injuries on the offensive line. And there was this weird fourth down redo that Virginia got. And there was a weird stolen possession in the Boston College game. I could tell you all of these things. But when it gets down to it, they've won 10 games over the last 2 years. 10 games. And somehow, if you say 10 wins over 2 years, that's an average of 5 wins per year. That's bad. But it actually gets worse the closer you get to it, because one of those 2 years was a 3-9 season where you just kept giving yourself no chance to win games. And then the next year, it was a 7-5 season that started off 7-0 and then proceeded to lose every single game, including 2 games against very much beatable opponents and a third game that was right there for you to win. Blew them. Blew the games. And again, I can get into the details on those seasons, and I can talk my way out of it. They had this, and they had that. And boy, if Eli Holstein could do this, and boy, if this and that, and this and that. But when it comes down to it, you're the head coach. We talked about how you're going to end up as the winningest coach in Pitt football history. Well, this is on you. This is on Pat Narduzzi. You won 10 games over the last 2 years. You started 7-0, and you've lost 5 in a row to finish the season. And the kids kept trying, and they worked hard. I mean, this week they kept trying and worked hard. Last week they set a record for missed tackles in the season, like a season high for missed tackles, which eclipsed the SMU game, where they apparently thought they were better than they were because they were 7-0 and went down to SMU and didn't realize you had to finish tackles. And then this game last week at Louisville, they end up having, I think Louisville had 140 yards after contact on rushing plays. You don't get 100, there are some truly exceptional players in college football and in the history of football who can rack up 140 yards after contact on rushing plays in a game. Louisville doesn't have those guys. They have good players, but they don't have those guys that are so exceptional that they can rack up 140 yards after contact. You have to let your opponent gain 140 yards after contact. And you throw in the yards after the catch, which is a little bit, you might catch a pass, 5 yards to run or whatever. Louisville, between yards after contact on rushing plays and yards after the catch on receiving plays, had 300 yards. 300 yards where presumably a tackle could have been made. They had 140 yards after contact and 160 yards after the catch. That, my friends, is not about the injured quarterback. And that's not about the injured left tackle. And that's not about the redo on fourth down against Virginia or the stolen possession here today that we saw where they totally screwed the pooch on that punt. That's just bad effort. And the effort reflects back on the coaching. And if you went to SMU thinking you were better than you were, that reflects on the coaching too. And so maybe they weren't going to beat SMU and Louisville, but they didn't need to get embarrassed in those games. And when Virginia game and the Clemson game and the Boston College game were right there for you to win, and you wasted those opportunities, I mean, those 3 games represented wins 8, 9, and or 10. All of which look better than 7-5. All of which look better than finishing on a 5-game losing streak. Just win one game. Because even coming into today, I said, well, if they can just win this game, you finish 8-4, you break the losing streak. All right, you come into this, just get this one. All right, you wasted it last week. You wasted the week before. You wasted the week before that. You wasted the week before that. So just win this one, And you can, at least you got a little something. You can go win 9 games in the bowl game. You can go 9-4. Now, we've come back to my August prediction, which was that this team would go 8-5. That was my August prediction. My August prediction, and we can roll the tape back, but you can ask anybody I talked to, and probably you heard it too if you listen to, watch these podcasts or listen to it. I said they would go 8-5. I said they would go 8-4. They would either go 8-4 and lose to like a Northwestern in the Pinstripe Bowl like they did in 2016, or they would go 7-5 and beat in like an Eastern Michigan in the Detroit Bowl like they did in 2019. And either way, the end result will be 8-5, which is not a terrible record. I would say it's the baseline for what counts as, like anything below that, anything below 8-5 is a bad record. So 8-5 is kind of that line above where you're not really going to say, well, that's a great season. You're barely even going to say it's a good season, but at least it's not a bad season. And that's where I thought this team would end up. That's where I thought this team could end up. But after starting 7-0, all of those expectations changed. And we can and have we have talked about how much those expectations changed, how much they should have changed. Maybe they shouldn't have changed. Maybe we should have known whatever, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't matter. This team just lost 5 games in a row for the first time under Pat Narduzzi. As a matter of fact, I don't know. Did Dave Wanstead lost 5 in a row in 2006. And so you're talking about 18 years of avoiding 5-game losing streaks. And you have to go back to 2006. The last time before that was 2001, Walt Harris with the spread offense experiment, where they actually did the opposite of like Wanstead. Wanstead in 2006 started the season 6-1, and then they lost the final 5. Walt Harris in 2001 started 1-5, and then they won the final 6 to finish 7-5. We can really chuckle about that. I mean, this is a take your pick, disgusting or disappointing outcome to this season after starting 7-0. All right, I'm going to get a couple super chatters. Listen, we got a lot of comments and questions over there in the chat screen. I'm going to get to as many as we can. We're going to give you guys a lot of time. We're going to probably hit the bottle again. We'll get through as much as we can here. But if you want to make sure your comment gets read or your question gets answered, be a super chatter. Click the little $sign down there at the bottom of the chat screen. Kick a couple bucks to the podcast. We appreciate it, and we will we'll get as many as we can. David Allen has the first question as a super chatter, says, when will Pat Narduzzi's buyout not be devastating? I mean, he signed through like 2030, so do the math. What's he make, like $6 million a year or something? The reality is, for a school like Pitt, and I mean, this is like touching the iceberg on something a much bigger conversation, David, and one that I think we'll probably have multiple times over the course of however long this show goes. The reality of the situation for Pitt and many schools like Pitt is it just doesn't make sense to pay a giant buyout. There are too many places that money can go. And like, let me ask you this. All right. So, because I think there are probably a lot of people saying Pitt should just pay the buyout, fire Pat Narduzzi. He lost 5 games this year. He went through 5 in a row this year. He went 3-9 last year. There are a lot of people saying this. And so ask yourself this question. All right. Where do you think that money, let's say Pitt had, let's just say it's like 15 million. I don't know what the buyout is, but let's just say 15 million, get you out of the contract right now. I'm guessing right now, 2024, it would cost more than that. But let's even just say 15 million. Somehow it's written into the deal, or you get a good deal or whatever. You could pay 15 million to make Pat Narduzzi go away right now. What's the better use? What's the better investment of $15 million if you're Pitt football right now? If you're the University of Pittsburgh looking to invest $15 million in the football program, what's the better use of $15 million? Is it paying a coach to go away so you can then pay another coach to come in? And then need money to get the players and build the roster and all those things that you're going to need over the next few years with NIL and revenue sharing? Or is it to use that money, however much that buyout money would be, and invest it in the program, invested in player acquisition, invested in building the roster? Pat Narduzzi, for whatever you want to say about him, has won with talented rosters. Okay, when he's had quality players, when he's had a good quarterback, he has won, right? He won 2 Coastal Division titles with Kenny Pickett. He won an ACC championship with Kenny Pickett and Jordan Addison and good defense. When the talent is there, he's won. So rather than, let's say you were going to be able to pay $15 million to make him go away, and then you need another $15 million to build the roster, plus another 15, however many million to hire a new coach. What if you just use that money to build the roster? I think I'm of the opinion they've got a good quarterback, somebody who can be their starting quarterback for the next 2 years and lead them to a lot of success. They obviously have to shore up the offensive line, but that's where that money starts coming in. That's what you need to do. You need to add offensive linemen. You need to add pass rushers. You probably could stand to go get a receiver. You might be able to fill out the depth at safety, but you need to add offensive linemen to protect this quarterback, who is I think, very good player and has a very bright future and will be very good for you. So you have two options, right? Your two roads diverge in the yellow wood. Okay. And you cannot take them both. Do you pay to make the coach go away and still have this bill of $15 million or $20 million that you need to spend to build your roster and keep it together, or whatever, however much that amount is? Or do you just focus on the talent and say, you know what, the coach is locked up here for a few more years. He's built a stable program. He's built a good culture. They've had a rough go of it the last 2 seasons. Let's try to help him build build the personnel, build the roster, build the talent around him. I mean, I think that's a realistic question a lot of schools are going to be asking themselves this offseason and next offseason and the offseason after that, of like, what makes more sense? Does it make more sense to pay someone to go away, or does it make more sense to invest in them and give them a chance to win? Now, Pitt didn't pay Jeff Capel to go away 3 years ago because they couldn't afford it, because it didn't make sense. There's like a bigger question too of like, should a university put that much money into making someone not work for them anymore? Just on as a general principle, or is that just a waste of money? And don't you think that the rest of the university would be like, wait, you what? You're paying how much to make someone go away? We could use new desks. We could use new pencils. My blackboard is not, could stand to be replaced. I mean, like, there's a lot of things that like $1 million could do to enhance the university experience, let alone $10 million or $15 million. So you have a bigger question of like, does the entire university want to do this? But look, with Jeff Capel, they were unable to do it. They might have wanted to do it, but they were unable to do it. And quite frankly, it didn't make sense to do it. It was too much money to pay someone not to work for you. So, I mean, it gets presented as publicly as well. They stuck with him. They believe in him. They showed their confidence. Also, they couldn't afford to do it. And the end result was, when he got the players, that he needed and wanted, they turned it around. They've turned it around. Hell of a win yesterday. Outstanding. It looks like it's going to be a good season. Not the same situation as Narduzzi, but in terms of buying out a coach, there's some overlap of like, you might as well just put the money into the roster and try and build the team and see if you can get some of that success again. Bill Florian is a super chatter, says, this season is a bigger disappointment than last season, in my opinion. Offense totally fell off. Next year is a big year for Narduzzi. Only in my opinion. I know there were a lot of injuries, but very frustrating. I definitely think, and this is not the first time I've had this conversation with people. I definitely think this season was a bigger disappointment, like you said, Bill, because of the 7-0 start, because of all the promise they showed, of all the false hope they created, or what ultimately ended up being false hope, and how good they looked, only to just completely collapse in the final 5 games. I think it absolutely could stand as a bigger disappointment. It's funny to say that compared to a 3-9 season. I mean, it's clearly, on the whole, comparing one product to the other. I mean, this year had, 2 huge wins, coming back from, deficits against Cincinnati and West Virginia. They've won at North Carolina for the first time. I think they uncovered some real gems in terms of talent and players, guys like Eli Holstein and Kyle Lewis emerging, some of the young defensive linemen emerged. I mean, like, there were all these things, but, all these things that last year did not have. I mean, last year did not have these various emergences and developments and positive moments and positive developments. But when you get into the story of the season, the fact that they started 7-0, collapsed down the stretch, and lost 5 games in a row to finish the season, I mean, I could see it. I could see it being a bigger disappointment for sure. JM Kavar. I apologize, sir. You say, thanks for what you do, Chris. Hopefully we get a bowl game folks can easily travel to. Military Bowl. I mean, I would think it's 7-5. That's what you're probably looking at. Military Bowl, Pinstripe Bowl. This is all going to be affected. Oh, did the let me see. Since I assume the Syracuse-Miami game went final. Syracuse won. So that means Miami will not be in the ACC title game. They'll be 10-2. I would think Miami would still make the college football playoffs. They got knocked out of the ACC title game by losing on the road in the finale by, what is this final score? 42-38, 4 points. So then, you get the ACC champion in and you get Miami in. There's two teams. There was a possibility, I thought, if the ACC could get 3 teams in, then that would, well, if the college football playoff takes 1 ACC team, 2 ACC teams, or 3 ACC teams, that trickles down and affects everybody else's bowl, possibilities, right? Because the more teams that get left out, the more of those slots that are filled up. Now, if, let's say Clemson beats SMU in the ACC title game, is that what it'll be? I don't even, I forget. They talked about the scenarios so many times. But anyway, if the ACC could end up getting 3 teams into the college football playoffs, and then Notre Dame as well, because the Irish could take one of Pitt or in the ACC's bowl slots, then, I mean, you have better possibility of getting into something like the Pinstripe Bowl or the Mayo Bowl in Charlotte or something like that. If the college football playoff only ends up taking 2 teams, well, that kicks somebody down. You know what I mean? If they only take 1 team, that kicks 2 teams down. They're going to take those slots and you're going to slide a little bit further. You're going to end up in Fenway. You're going to end up in the Military Bowl, someplace like that. So Military Bowl is definitely convenient. It's easy to get to. It's a pretty cool place. You probably play Navy. We'll see. But it's a possibility. But you can never really tell with these. Eric Bruno says, we need a basketball discussion. This football season was a disaster. Should I say total implosion? Can't believe this collapse of a season happened. I can't believe it either. I mean, the injuries obviously played a part. And once those started piling up, it became clear that there were issues that were going to be tough to get past. But I still thought there were winnable games on this schedule. I still thought this team was talented enough. And I'll tell you what, like you want to, as we get into the nitty gritty of this game and this team, the offense, obviously, after the first 5 games fell off pretty considerably. Big struggles against Cal and Syracuse, dug into a big hole, against SMU, really couldn't do enough against any of the games, any of the final, 5 games, any of the final 7 games. The offense didn't really do enough to win, even though they won 2 of those games. But the defense, though, I don't think the defense gets off the hook here at all. The defense bears a whole lot of the brunt for this. The defense gave up, like, by the numbers to Boston College, it wasn't bad. 381 yards. It's less than 400 yards of total offense. 128 rushing yards, which is well under Boston College's average on the season. And granted, Boston College got a touchdown out of a pick 6, weird fluky kind of play. So, they only gave up Pitt's defense gave up 4 touchdowns. But they just gave up some bad third downs, 3rd and 20 for a touchdown. I just couldn't get key stops. They made some key stops. I think they made 2 big 4th down stops, and then they gave one up at the end. But they had 2 big 4th down stops. They did pretty well on 3rd down. 5 of 14, Boston College was on 3rd down. Did a pretty decent job stopping the run, but gave up some big passing plays. Again, and this I was like, I would always say that, well, a good quarterback can pick this defense apart. I mean, I don't know if this Grayson James is good. He seems like a decent player, actually. Grayson James, a Boston College quarterback. But I don't know if I'm putting him in the same category as, like, some of these other guys that have picked, Pitt's defense apart over the years. And he goes 20 of 28 for 253 yards and 2 touchdowns. I mean, the only turnover, and I don't know, does this even count as a turnover? They don't even count it as a turnover. Kyle Lewis's interception on the the messed up extra point. They don't even count that as a turnover. So Pitt gets no turnovers. They give up 2. And the defense, I think they just gave up too many. They needed to play better. They needed to be the kind of shutdown unit they pride themselves on being. And I thought Boston College's offense would be the one to get right against. I thought Boston College's offense would be the kind of offense that they could stop, because a run-heavy offense with a quarterback who wasn't really proven, didn't look great, some fine skill players, but should be the kind of guys Pitt should be able to beat, and they didn't. They didn't. Bond had 5 for 45. Morales, the tight end, had 4 for 51. Harris had 3 for 85 and a touchdown with a 53-yard catch. Franklin, the tight end, had 2 for 53. Huge third down conversion to that guy, that big tight. It's disappointing that this defense, while the offense was struggling, this defense couldn't pick up the slack. And that's a big indictment on Narduzzi as well. Eric Bruno did say we need a basketball discussion. Look, that was unbelievable yesterday. I almost did a post-game show after it, but it just wasn't going to work out with the timing. The quick thing I would say about Pitt's win at Ohio State yesterday, what's really remarkable is I put up a thread on the message boards at Panther-Lair.com and got the response that I expected. I said, who was Pitt's MVP yesterday? Was it Jalen Lowe, Ishmael Leggett, Papa Amadou Kante, or Zach Austin? And I think each of those guys, obvious case, Jalen Lowe had a game-high 28 points. Ishmael Leggett scored 8 points and had 2 assists, a steal, and a rebound during the big 15-0 run. Papa Amadou Kante, Jeff Capel said he was the guy who made all the difference on the court. And Zach Austin, of course, hits the game-winning shot. I said, who was the MVP? And there were answers were all over the place. Nobody, there was, I think all 4 of those guys got recognition from Pitt fans for their performances. I mean, it was that kind of game where they really got some great all-around team performances and had a guy break out in Papa Amadou Kante. A huge breakout game for him. So that was positive. I was like, it'd be pretty cool if we could do the post-game show after the football game and coming off, huge basketball game on the road where they win. Volleyball team clinching the ACC championship, setting themselves up for a number 1 seed when that's announced tomorrow. And then the football team closing the regular season with a win. I was like, that would be really nice. It would be a very fun afternoon if we could just, or early evening, as we started this thing at 7:00, we could just sit back and talk about 3 wins. But football, as they've done, let us down. All right, let's go. We'll get into the regular comments and questions. You want to make sure we read your comment or your question, type it into a super chat, and we'll get to it for sure. Josh Newark says, was Desmond Reed injured or did he make a business decision? And if it's a business decision, do we assume he's following Bell to a different job? You're going 10 bridges down the road there, Josh. Desmond Reed was hurt. I don't think he didn't travel for health reasons, is what they're saying inside the program. He did get banged up against Louisville, if you recall. And so he was not available to play, and that's why he didn't travel. Now, does that guarantee that he's going to be back next season? No. I think, honestly, I would say of the 3 possible outcomes, Reed returns to Pitt, Reed transfers to another school, Reed goes to the NFL. I think 1 and 3 are probably more likely than 2. I would put Reed transferring to another school pretty low on the list. Coming back to Pitt or checking out the NFL probably are the 2 most likely options, would be my guess going forward. I wouldn't be surprised if he tries the NFL. I mean, I don't know how he would get drafted or if he would get drafted. Could be a mid-round guy with his speed and playmaking ability, pass catching ability, return ability. Could end up being a mid to late round guy. And I could definitely see a guy like Desmond Reed looking at it and saying, hey, how many more injuries am I going to walk away from? How many more injuries am I going to be able to withstand? Maybe I should just get out while the getting's good. So I could see him doing that and not transfer to another school because he would rather get paid NFL money to take whatever beating he's going to take, the next time he steps on the field. Although you could get probably pretty close to NFL money at a college these days. Josh Newark says, Sheriff Nate Yarnell, love him sticking around, but he's not a D1 starter. Hey, man, you know what? I'll tell you this. For today, and maybe today only, You'll get no Nate Yarnell slander from me. None. Not going to do it. That guy took a beating today, made all kinds of big time throws, all kinds of, I mean, he didn't play great, but he made enough plays. He made a lot of plays. He missed a few, but he made some big plays, all while probably feeling pretty crappy inside, I got to say, because he was getting knocked around. So you'll get no Nate Yarnell slander from me on this show. You guys want to do it? Go ahead. But I'm not going to do it. Benjamin Glazer says, at the end of the day, the offensive line depth, playing out of position and having no running backs outside of Reed really hurt. Plus, Nate Yarnell is fine, but he's just not consistent enough. Holstein is really good, but yeah, I mean, Holstein, you're going to have, I think you're going to have some issues with health throughout his career, like Kenny Pickett did. Kenny Pickett got banged up a lot over the course of his career. He, because of the style of play, and Holstein's bigger than Kenny Pickett, so maybe he can take more of a beating, but the style of play, and it is part of what makes the guys like that great. It also puts them in jeopardy. It puts their bodies in jeopardy. As to the offensive line depth, yeah, that was an issue, and that's going to be an issue. And you know what? I don't think most teams are going to have good quality offensive line depth that's ready to play. Your best case scenario, you go into a season with 5 experienced starters. You're not going to have 6 or 7 experienced guys most years. It's just not likely. What Pitt has to do now is get like at least 2 proven quality starters for the offensive line for next year. At least 2, if not 3. I think when you look down the line, Ryan Baer, okay, I think there's something to build there. BJ Williams, okay, I think there's something to build there. Lenny Cooper, let's say he comes back, okay, he was doing a pretty good job. You're going to need other starters. And I'm not writing off Terrence Enos. I'm not writing off Isaiah Montgomery. I'm not writing off Jackson Brown. I think all those guys have a chance to be good in their careers, but you got to upgrade. You got to upgrade right now. You can't wait for Isaiah Montgomery to grow into it. I don't know if you have time to wait for Jackson Brown to grow into it. They can't learn on the field. Not next year. Next year is too important. There's too much riding on next season. Eli Holstein's too important. He, I think, is going to be really good, but you need to keep him healthy. You need to keep him up. You need to give him a chance. Nate Yarnell didn't have a chance today, and it's a credit to Nate Yarnell after all the shots he took, getting sacked 6 times and probably getting hit at least twice as many of that. He still throws for 296. He hangs in there, takes the shots, makes the throws, and makes some big plays. You can't have Eli Holstein playing in that kind of environment next year. He's too important, and next season is too important. You have got to upgrade with ready to play, help you right now offensive linemen. Right now. And the running back depth, I don't know. I think Jules Goff is going to be good. If Desmond Reed decides not to come back, either to transfer, which I think is unlikely, although possible, or to go to the NFL, which I think is probably more likely than transferring, although also, not impossible. Then you might need to go get a transfer running back and bring somebody in to play in this offense. Josh Newark says, do the analytics support going for 2 down 11? So they weren't down. They were down 11 when they went for 2. So how much time was left? Let me check the time. This one, I couldn't quite figure it out. I kind of got it, but I wasn't entirely sure. There was 3:59 left to go. Pitt's down 11. They go for 2, which would the only thing I can think. All right, so they were down 11. They go for 2, right? 4 minutes left to play. The only thing I can think is they went for 2. So if they score a touchdown and a field goal, they win. Right? Because if you go for 2, you cut the lead to 9. No matter what you do, when you're down 11, it's a 2-score game. You kick or you go for 2, it doesn't matter. It's a 2-score game. If you go for 2 and you make it, you're down 9. You can win with a touchdown and a field goal. Right? You kick the extra point, you're down 10, you tie with a touchdown and a field goal. You go for 2 and you miss, you're down 11. You still need a touchdown and a field goal. You also have to hit a 2-point conversion. So, and that's to tie. So I guess going for 2 there, cutting the lead to 9, gives you a chance to win with a touchdown and a field goal. That's the upside, and doesn't it doesn't make it like a 3-score game. It's still going to be a 2-score game no matter what. That's the only thing I can think. It was a little bit weird. It didn't change anything, ultimately, and I don't think it changed much in terms of Pitt still needed to score twice. They needed a touchdown and a field goal, or 2 touchdowns. That's the only thing I could come up with of like, why would you go for 2 there? What good is it? What's the difference between being down 9 and being down 10? Well, a touchdown, a field goal can win when you're down 9. It's the only thing I can say. David Allen says, clear as day to me that if you don't have strong athletes at defensive back or defensive line, which we don't, Narduzzi's defense is a disaster. He won't change it despite the obvious issue, thus failure. So, there's a few different elements to that. I don't know if the safeties lived up to the expectations. I don't know if Javon McIntyre lived up to the expectations. I think Donovan McMillan was fine. What did he finish with today? He had 11 tackles, so I think that put him over 100 for the season. That would have made him, let me just double check and bring up the stats here. Let's see. Yeah, he had 97. So coming into today, he had 11 today, so he has 100 and, what's the math? 108 tackles for the season. That makes him the first player since Scott McKillop to have 100 tackles in back-to-back seasons. So there's that. McMillan was fine. I didn't think McIntyre lived up to it. I didn't think PJ O'Brien lived up to it. I think the corners looked like first-year starters at times. I thought they had their moments. I thought there were times where Rylan Gandy and Rashad Battle played really well, and Tamon Lynham played really well. And then there were times where they just got beat or they looked bad. You know what I mean? Where they just, Rashad Battle, it's a tough ask to tell your corner to go tackle Kai Robichaux in the backfield, but he had a shot at him. It could have been 2nd and 12. Robichaux runs for a first down. There were plays like that, but they, I thought they just looked like first-year starters. I think all those guys will be back again next year. I think Lynham will be back. But Battle and Gandy can come back. I think they will. And I think there's young talent in the secondary as well. I think Shadarian Harrison's going to be really good. I think Jeremiah Anglin is going to be really good. I think Cruz Brookins and Jesse Anderson are going to be really good. Alan Bryant, I hear positive things about him, as a true freshman who redshirted this year. So I think there's talent there. And I kind of feel like there's some talent along the defensive line as well. I think next year is going to be a year where a lot of young defensive linemen play, and I think that's a good thing. I think Sincere Edwards, I think Francis Brew, I think Isaiah Neal, I think Jasir Whittington are all going to be really good in their second or third years. Sean Fitzsimmons will be back. He'll be in his, 4th year. He's going to be really good. I think Jimmy Scott showed some potential. They need to add a pass rusher, though, from the portal. I think if they could get one impact pass rusher out of the transfer portal, and I'm talking impact, more impact than Nate Matlack, Chief Borders, and David Ojebwe, the 3 defensive ends they brought in this year. I think if they can get a real impact out of the defensive end from the portal, their D-line will be pretty good. Even with Nakai Johnson going into the transfer portal, they're set to bring back Sean Fitzsimmons, Isaiah Neal, Francis Brew, Jasir Whittington, Nick James. I always forget to add Nick James. That's a good group. I think that's a really solid group of tackles and with some impact players. Fitzsimmons has shown he can be an impact player. I think Isaiah Neal can be an impact player. I think Francis Brew will be, and I think Jasir Whittington is going to be a stud too. So as long as you can keep all those guys here, tackle should be okay. I do think you need to supplement at defensive end a little bit. 1 or 2, at least 1 pass rushing defensive end impact guy needs to come in, and then 2 of you can get them, but you need at least 1 to improve there, because you're right, David. If you don't have strong athletes at DB and defensive line, the defense is going to struggle. You gotta, excuse me, you got to get pressure. And this group just doesn't get pressure enough. Does not get pressure. How many times was Pitt had 3 sacks in this game? 3 sacks. That's not enough. Like you have to. I mean, that's a decent total, but you have to be able to get pressure, and it's a big reason why Grayson James went 20 of 28, completed 71% of his passes because Pitt wasn't getting pressure. Let's see. Matt Fry says, can't run, can't protect your passer. The offensive line won no battles after the Syracuse game. This is the poorest offensive line I've seen in over 40 years of watching football, both pro or college. No, it's not. I mean, it's not even the worst you've seen in the last 20 years at Pitt. It's just not. I mean, like, pro or college, I mean, did you watch the Steelers last year? Green says, so how about Zach Austin in that game-winning 3? Let's go Pitt basketball. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to watch Pitt hoops for sure. I'm just going to read through a few of these. We'll stop every now and then. Mark Shoju says, I got to say, I have lots to say, starting with the fact that this has to be the worst Power 5 offensive line in college football. It's probably not, but it might be, but it's probably not. Matt Fry says, ugly season, totally unacceptable. This has to fall a lot on the coaching. Sorry, 7-0 to 7-5 is just unfathomable. It is unfathomable. It is. There's always going to be a question, though. All right. There's always going to be a question of how this happened, of why this happened, of what fell apart, of what didn't work. Because, like, we can list a lot of factors. All right, like if we just made a list. Okay. If we just made a list of the factors that led to this collapse. All right. And no priority, like not ranked, not in order. Just the things that happened over the last 5 games that caused this team to lose 5 in a row. Quarterback injury, right? Again, I'm not saying that's the number one thing, Matt. Okay. Let's just list it. Quarterback injury. Okay. I'm writing it down to my legal pad. Left tackle, Branson Taylor, right? Which then caused a change at right tackle, which, they improved left tackle, I guess, by moving Ryan Baer over there, but I don't know if it was a net positive to do so because right tackle became a major liability. Desmond Reed, injury, right? And again, I know it's not all injuries, but let's write it down, okay? The Virginia 4th down do-over. Redo, okay? Today's stolen possession in the punt. Okay. Terrible tackling at SMU. Right? Terrible tackling at SMU. Terrible tackling at Louisville. Terrible tackling at Louisville. What else have we put on this list? Ben Saul has missed a field goal, but I don't know. The Cade Klubnik run. Klubnik 50-yard run. Right. Drop passes. Drop passes were a big part. Dropped passes. What else? Let's see. I'll scroll to the bottom of the comments here and see if you guys are chiming in things. Drop passes. Yep. Stolen possession. Des Reed. Quarterback. Yeah, Matt Fry agrees on the drop passes. What else? So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There has to be more. How else did they lose these games? The offense going into a hole, okay? Because the offense fell apart during the wins, Cal and Syracuse, but it continued to be completely ineffective in a lot of these games. Ineffective offense. Okay. What else? You guys have anything else? Oh, no pass rush. Good call. No pass rush. Although that was kind of the case all season, but we'll add it here. No pass rush. Because the reality is when you lose 5 games in a row, it's going to be a long list like this. Okay? It's going to be a long list. And right now we're up to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. We're up to 12 things, right? Let's just say out of those 12, which ones do we put on the coaches? Which ones do we put on something out of their control? The injuries, that's not in the coach's control. Okay. Even if we say, well, why are you running Eli Holstein to do this or do that? It's not in their control. All right. So we'll cross off the injuries. Okay. We'll also cross off the two really bad calls, the 4th down redo against Virginia and the stolen possession today. We'll cross those off. That's not on the coaches. Terrible tackling at SMU. Yeah. I mean, yeah. You know what? You're responsible for getting your guys focused and ready to play. We'll put that on them. Terrible tackling at Louisville. Ditto. Cade Klubnik's 50-yard run. Sometimes you got to make a play. Sometimes other guys make plays. I'm going to set that aside. Drop passes. Well, they work so hard on it. Well, that's still going to fall on you. Okay? Maybe you need better players. Maybe you're emphasizing the wrong players. Maybe you're not getting the ball to the guys who can help you win games. You know what was interesting today? And I'll tell you, and I think I might have talked about this on that episode of the Morning Pitt this week where I said, the five things Pitt has to do to try to win. And they didn't necessarily do this all great because they didn't win the game, but Konate Mumfield, 8 catches for 144 yards and 1 touchdown. Kenny Johnson, 5 catches for 63 yards. Okay. Gavin Bartholomew, 3 for 26 and 2 touchdowns, although he had a bad drop. 43 passes thrown, or 44 passes thrown, I guess. And 20 of those passes were thrown to Mumfield and Johnson. Throwing Bartholomew is 27 out of the 44 passes. That's where the ball needs to go. That's who needs to be getting targeted. But there have been way too many times this season where Mumfield and Johnson were not the leaders in targets on this team. As a matter of fact, I think when you look coming into this season, they weren't even the leaders among the receivers in snaps played. That's on coaching. So when we talk about ineffective offense, that's on coaching. And when we talk about drop passes, I am going to put that on coaching. Not because the coaches drop the passes, but because they're calling the plays that are not, they're not getting the balls to the guys who can make plays. Look at the catches Konate Mumfield made today. Look at the catches he made. Sensational stuff. And I know Kenny Johnson has had some drops here and there, but that catch he made to barely get the ball off the ground, sensational stuff. These are your best receivers. There's no reason they should not be leading the team in targets and receptions and yards every single game. None whatsoever. It's coaching malpractice to not get the ball to your best players. And this is what we were supposed to believe Cade Bell did when he came in from Western Carolina. He got the ball to the playmakers. Today, they got the ball to the guys who should get the ball. They haven't done a good job of that full season. ZC717 even says it, not getting the ball to your playmakers. That's absolutely right. It's huge. It's huge. And so I put that on them. And then the pass rush, part of that comes down to the personnel and the players you have. But that's coach's responsibility, right? You got to get good players. They need to improve the talent along the defensive line. Like we said, they need to improve the talent. So, what falls on coaching? I would say the tackling and the effort in like the SMU and Louisville games. I would say the drop passes and the ineffective offense. I think, initially when Cal defended Pitt differently and then Syracuse picked up on it and SMU picked up on it, I didn't think Cade Bell did a good job of adjusting to it. I thought there were stretches in the Clemson game where they looked like they were adjusting to it and getting better, but then you start getting into injuries and, you don't have Holstein and it kind of changes the whole situation. But I didn't think Cade Bell did a great job of adjusting to how defenses had adjusted to him. And he's going to have I think he's going to have some real reflection to do this offseason. Now, I think Cade Bell is really smart offensive coach. I think he knows offense. I think he knows what he's doing. I think he's finding out that when you play against Power 5 competition and they've got Power 5 resources and they're studying film and they're breaking down every single tendency you have, you know what? They might have a feel for what you're trying to do. And you need to adjust to that and you need to learn from that. And he needs to learn from this season. Next year, assuming everybody's still in place, and we have to add that caveat every time, but next year, I think we'll find out if he learned from this season or what he learned from this season. Because I think it got better, but then you started, you had quarterback changes and things like that, and you can't, it's tough to then evaluate when you're in that situation. Pitt wins, says Nate is not a terrible quarterback, but he's in the wrong offense. The offense moves too slow with him in it. I hope he transfers and has a better season somewhere else. Like, again, we will have no Nate Yarnell slander on this post-game show tonight. I think he did a hell of a job today. I think he played his tail off, worked really hard, did everything he could to try to get this team to win, took a beating in the process. If he decides to transfer, I don't think anyone would fault him for it. He wants an opportunity to play, an opportunity to be prominently featured, and hopefully he can get it somewhere. If that's what he wants, if he wants to just stick with this program and be the guy behind old Eli Holstein, which could very well lend itself to more opportunities, then, shout out to him. But either way, Nate Yarnell has earned I think he's earned my respect. I assume he's earned yours as well. Mark Shilju says, this is the third time in my life that Pitt has been at least 6-1 and lost 5 in a row. No fan base should go through this. When else was it? 2006. When was the other time before that, Mark? I'm going to have to look it up. You're probably going to say it, but been at least 6-1. Oh, no, not 1991. They ended up losing 5 in a row. No. 1991, they started off 5-0 and then lost 4 in a row. Anyway, I'll take your word for it. I forgot when it happened. But 5-game winning streaks don't happen, or 5-game losing streaks don't happen very often. Matt Fry says it's not just Nate Yarnell being under siege. Every running back, including Desmond Reed, the past 4 games has the line of scrimmage set 3 to 4 yards in the backfield. Yeah, unfortunately, it's been really hard. It's been really hard for these running backs to get going. It's been really hard for anything to work with this offense, with this offensive line. Voodoo IPA says, today was day 29 of my child being stuck in the ICU at Children's. I took her there right before SMU kickoff. I take full ownership of the collapse. Sir, I appreciate that you can make a joke, but I think we all raise our cups to you. It's more important than a 5-game losing streak. And we hope that the time comes where you and your daughter and your family don't have to watch Pitt games from Children's. Hope everything works out. Hope you can be home soon. Please. To you. Cheers. Let's scroll through here. Matt Fry says, Chris, you must admit you were wrong after SMU. The reaction was lose out. You didn't think it would happen. Guess what? It did. Yeah, I was wrong. Yeah, I did not think they would lose out. After 7-0, after taking, because I think after 7-0, well, after SMU, after that first loss, no, I didn't think they would lose out. I think it would be a wake-up call. I thought they would get back on track and still finish like 9-3. I was wrong about that. And there are a lot of reasons. And all these things that I wrote down are the reasons why. From the injuries to the bad calls to the bad coaching. There were a lot of things that I didn't anticipate. There were a lot of things that even like the people who were saying Pitt was going to lose out, there are a lot of things that you didn't anticipate. It didn't happen for all the reasons you thought it would. It happened for some of the reasons you thought it would, but not all of them. So I must admit it, and I will admit it. Yeah, I was wrong. No question about it. Gandhi R wants to know, is this the end for dues? I don't think so. Green says, stop me if you heard this one before. Pat Narduzzi's defense can't stop the pass, and we lose. I mean, they only gave up 250 yards. I mean, it's not a little, but it's not a lot. I mean, it's not crazy. They just gave up some key plays at some bad moments, you know? They made good plays for a lot of the game, but they needed to make them in some key situations. Let's see. Rusty Shackelford says everyone knows Narduzzi has to be fired. We're just in that waiting period until the school can afford it. Right. And that's a few years from now. So, yeah, Benjamin Glazer says Pitt in November, the last 2 seasons is 1-8. Yeah, it's wild because in 2022, you remember they went undefeated in November. Won the 4 games in a row to break a 2-game losing streak. Last year, they got 1 win in 4 games. And this year, 1 win in 4 games. Or no wins in 4 games, excuse me. So 1-7. Or did they play 5 games this month? Hold on. Yep, they did. 1-8. Yeah, what do you want to do? I mean, like, they are. They're 1-8. It's bad. Matt Presto says, in all caps, so I don't know if I'm supposed to yell this. Chris, it's basketball season. Pitt buzzer beater is the shot of the game. Wrong sport, be damned. Yeah, I mean, we're going to be on basketball post games pretty soon. Alex Zhang says, team is a joke. Let the transfers begin, and I don't blame them. Well, okay, so let me say this, all right? Pitt went 11-3 in 2021, and Jordan Addison transferred. Like, I think it reflects less on the team performance when guys transfer, and it's more about guys wanting to go get paid. I think, like, honestly, like, I think that's always going to be the biggest factor is where can guys get the most NIL money? And I think Pitt can offer a decent amount. I think they can make competitive offers. But when it comes down to it, they're not going to be able to outspend everybody. And if there's somebody else who really wants a guy, they're going to be able to outspend Pitt. And they're going to, and probably get him. It's just the natural order of things. Pitt is going to lose transfers this offseason. And it's not going to be, maybe some, but for the most part, it's not going to be because they lost 5 games in a row. Last year, they had, I think, 19 scholarship guys going to the transfer portal who actually left, not counting Brandon George and Nate Temple, who went in and then came back. They had 19 guys going to the scholarship portal, or going to the transfer portal, excuse me. And it'll probably be a similar number this year between the winter window and the spring transfer window. It'll probably be right around 20. I think that's what you should expect every year. And for the most part, it's going to be guys who aren't playing, guys who are down the totem pole, guys who are down the depth chart or lost their spot on the depth chart or never were up the depth chart to begin with. That's what it's going to be for the most part. And then there's going to be a couple guys you wish you could have back. There's going to be a couple guys you get, like first or second team guys that are going to go. And that's just the reality. And I think you should go into every offseason expecting that you're going to turn over a quarter of your roster, more than a quarter of your roster between seniors and transfers. That's how it's going to be every year. Like until there becomes like multi-year contracts, you're going to have 20 guys. No, you're going to have a quarter of your roster every year getting turned over. That's just what it is. David Tamasy says, Chris, are you going to the bowl game? Well, I don't know where the bowl game is yet, but probably not. I would say it's highly unlikely. To be honest, I like going to the bowl games and everything like that, but I would rather stay here in Pittsburgh, watch the game, and then do the post-game show afterward. It fits a little bit better in the Panther-Lair budget. Let's see. Mary Beth and Robert McCafferty say 3 shots for me, please. I can't see how the new AD can keep this intact. I'm not going to do 3 shots. We never even got around to doing a second shot. I don't think we are going to do a second shot. So we won't do that. But the new AD, look, again, people have asked about that. Do I think the new AD would make a change? I don't think the new AD was hired during the season. He was hired before the Syracuse game, right? So he's watched this team play 6 games. I just can't see an AD saying, oh, hey, I'm only a month and a half into the job. I watched the team play 6 games and I'm going to fire the coach. I just don't see. Oh, and I'm going to try and get a 8-figure buyout to do it. I just don't see that happening. Dropping Nuts says, Chris, you've been wrong, so wrong about these safeties all season. They suck. They were not as good as Eric Hallett and Brandon Hill. I thought they were okay. I thought Javon McIntyre was a bit of a disappointment. I don't think PJ O'Brien lived up to it. So yeah, I guess I was wrong. They were not as good as I expected them to be. Not as good as I expected them to be. Let's see. Scrolling through here. Benjamin Glazer says, I actually really liked the CW broadcast. Tom Brenneman and Max Brown are really good. They were pretty solid. I thought they were good in, criticizing the officiating, which was good. I thought Tom Brenneman did that. The Luke Kuechly segment went on a little bit too long for my liking. I thought Max Brown did a decent job. He called it out. He was really good on those 3rd and 9 plays when he kept saying what Boston College was going to do. It's like, well, Max Brown could figure that out. You'd like to think Pitt's defensive coaches could figure it out too, but maybe they should hire Max Brown to be on the defensive staff. Scroll through. Daygees says recruits are definitely rethinking now. LOL. I don't think so. I think they have one guy who's taking a visit to another school this weekend, and that always raises an eyebrow. That's always a red flag. You know what I mean? Guys could always, if you see guys taking that official visit right before signing day, that's always something to keep an eye on. And so we will, because signing day is actually Wednesday. Did you realize that? Signing day is on Wednesday, which is kind of nuts. But so that's coming up in a few days. But the rest of the class seems pretty solid and set. So I don't know if recruits are definitely rethinking now. LOL. Mark Shoju says, why does Pitt continue to bring the house when they can't get home on 3rd and long? How many times could they drop 7 or 8 in coverage and get off the field, but instead blitz, leaving their secondary and man coverage when they could simply give up 7 to 8 yards and get off the field? Yeah, 3rd and 20, they're in like press man instead of like playing a zone. Although 3rd and 20, that touchdown catch, that kid just made an incredible catch. That was an incredible catch for the touchdown. Can't get anything about that. You can't do anything about that. I do think they blitz too much on 3rd and really long plays. I don't. I think they could probably play more zones on some of those 3rd and 15, 3rd and 16, 3rd and 20 type of plays. I think sometimes they get caught. They give up in a 3rd and long because they do bring too much pressure. But I don't know. It's their defense. They're committed to it, for better or for worse. Green says Syracuse just beat Miami and finished 9-3. Fire Pat Narduzzi. His defense is outdated and won't change it. That's a pretty funny comment, actually. Do you realize the irony in your comment, sir? You realize holding up Syracuse is the model of excellence. At the same time, you're criticizing Pat Narduzzi's defense when the Narduzzi's defense crushed Syracuse this year. Pick better examples. Let's see. Michael Balsarek says this team lacks depth, and a couple of key injuries and everything fell apart until they build a deeper roster. 7-5, excuse me, is the best they're going to do. Well, the thing is, I think it's hard to build good quality offensive line depth. I think it's hard to have the kind of offensive line depth that you can just throw another guy in there and be okay. I think they're in a spot where they didn't have necessarily a lot of veteran offensive linemen they could put in there, and certainly not guys with experience like they've had the last couple of years when they've run into offensive line injuries. At quarterback, I mean, like, how deep are you going to get at quarterback? They're about as deep as you could hope to be, where they've got a backup who's played, running back. Excuse me. I mean, they probably need some more depth there. They do need to recruit better. Like, there's no question about it. They need to recruit better. They need to get better teams. They need to get better transfers. They need more talent. Because for all we talk about with the coaching, and I think there are criticisms to make there, like, their defensive line wasn't good enough. Their pass rush wasn't good enough. Their defensive ends weren't good enough this year. And that's on the coaches for putting the roster together. But the players just weren't good enough. And so they do need to improve the talent level. And that's where the portal comes in. That's where the portal will help you. Mike Irwin said, what an unbelievable collapse by this team. Just an awful way to finish the season. They should deny any invitation to any minor garbage bowl they would get invited to. No, I don't think they should. I think they should play it. I think they will. They should not turn it down. Dwayne K says Holstein has 2.5 good games, and now Pitt fans are in love with what he could be. I see nothing but inconsistencies and inability to throw the anticipation. Really? Because I'm pretty sure he had a whole hell of a lot to do with the comeback at Cincinnati, the comeback against West Virginia, the win at North Carolina, and actually he was playing pretty well to start the game at Louisville, if you recall. So, no, I'd say it's more than 2.5 good games, Dwayne. For a guy who's a redshirt freshman, where all you're talking about is what he could be. That's the whole conversation, and I think he's going to be. I think he's going to be good there. Josh Newark says Peak promised to take shots for every $5 donation. I never promised that, Josh. Anyway, what are we at now? We have 3. No, we only have 2 actually. So I'm only 1 shot behind if I did promise that, but I never promised that. So don't. I said it'd be funny if I did that. Let's see. Scrolling through here. Connor Duran says Eli Holstein's first year playing, and he didn't lose a game that he started and played the entirety of. If you're a Pitt fan ready to move on from him, you have zero clue what you're talking about. I mean, SMU, like that was Holstein, right? Like, Holstein was the guy at SMU. I don't think, you're right, not playing the entirety of. They switched quarterbacks late because what was the point? But he threw 47 passes in that game. So he lost that game as the starter. He was the starter against Virginia and threw 23 passes. So, I mean, you can make a case for that one too. And he started the Louisville game, but went out on the second drive. So maybe you want to take that one off his record. But I mean, I think the future is pretty bright for him, and the future is bright with Pitt. The future's bright for Pitt with Eli Holstein. Mike Irwin, Narduzzi can't take this team to another level. Well, he has. Like, you might say that he can't do it again, but to pretend like it had never happened, I mean, it has happened. Let's see. Blackman614 says maybe Charlie Partridge saw something and knew it was time to get out. Yeah, he saw going down to the wire with kids who had been committed since June, and he had to, sweat it out and try and convince them to stay and get NIL money to keep those guys in the recruiting class last year. And he said, you know what? This isn't really how I want to spend my time anymore. I don't think Charlie Partridge was worried that like the ship was sinking at Pitt, because even if the ship sank with Pitt, Charlie Partridge was going to be able to find another job no matter what. I don't think it was about that at all. Let's see. Mark Shilaju says, I can be patient with the defensive line considering the transfer portal took 3 starters to other schools due to NIL, but there's no excuse for not recognizing the O-line could not afford a single injury. They brought in, one transfer on the offensive line. They brought in Lyndon Cooper. I think that was it, right? Yeah, but that has to be addressed this offseason. I mean, they're going to have to bring in more. I don't think there's any question about it. Michael Balsarek says, Pat Narduzzi's post-ACC title grace period should be over next year if they play like this. Yeah, I agree. Seat starts getting really hot, for sure, if it's not already. ZC717 is a super chatter, says Charlie Partridge also wasn't going to pass up the NFL. Not most college coaches will. I think those opportunities were probably there for Charlie Partridge. I think they would have continued to be there for Charlie Partridge. I think it was just a matter of him going when he was ready to go. And I think he was ready to go. Let's see. Just scrolling through, find some voices we haven't heard from. Connor Durand says 60% of the net new NIL spending this offseason should be offensive line. I think it should as well, and I think it will be. Let's see. Blackman614 says, can you trust this staff to actually identify talent, specifically offensive line? No. Says no in caps. Identify talent in general? Yeah, I think this staff, particularly on defense, has done a really good job of that. Offensive line, that's a bigger question mark. That's a bigger question mark of how they can do with identifying talent, developing talent. And I think we haven't seen this current staff recruit the offensive line. So I guess the jury's still out there, but I don't think the last offensive staff did a great job. And I think that's why they're in the position they're in. Dwayne K says, I want to see the version of Cade Bell's offense the first 3 games of the season. He slowed the offense down and turned Eli Holstein into a confused and not confident quarterback. Dwayne, I think that had as much to do with defenses as it had to do with Cade Bell and his offense. I think defenses changed the way. I think defenses figured out that, like, hey, if you blitz Eli Holstein, he can break down and take off and hurt you with his legs. So don't blitz him. Rush 3, maybe 4. Drop the rest of the guys in coverage and see if Cade Bell can give him a good, system of routes to beat zone coverage, and B, can Eli Holstein make the reads and pick it apart? And that was where they struggled. That was what Cal did, and it obviously worked well, even though Pitt still won that game. It's what Syracuse did, and it worked well, even though, again, Pitt still won that game, and that was with 3 defensive touchdowns. And I think that was an easy model to follow. This offseason, assuming both of those guys are back, which again is just a caveat we have to say every time, this offseason, Cade Bell and Eli Holstein have to figure out how to attack that kind of defensive scheme. I think Cade Bell is smart enough to figure something out. I think Eli Holstein is good enough to execute it, but they have to do it. Ryan Falcone says Eli only had about 5 to 6 quarters of good quarterback play. He probably had twice as many where he sucked. He was a solid freshman and nothing more. Yeah, but he was a solid freshman who threw for 350 yards and 3 touchdowns in each of his first 5 games, led 2 double-digit comebacks in the fourth quarter, and won at a place the Pitt has never won.
Never.
Like, he's not just a solid freshman. Okay, he was up and down. Like, at Cincinnati, the first 40 minutes of the Cincinnati game, I was like, wow, this dude might not be good. And then the final 20 minutes, he led them to a victory when they were down 3 touchdowns in the final 20. You know, he did the same thing against West Virginia. He made big time plays. And I think when you look at the fact that he's a redshirt freshman playing for the first time, and he goes out and does those things, you say, wow, there's something to build on here. Like, there's something that you can turn into something. You know, there might be some real usable parts here on a guy who can be really good. Yeah. Connor Durant says, after the quarterback carousel we've had since Kenny Pickett, you'd think fans would be more excited about a freshman who has shown promise and has tons of eligibility. I would think so too. But here, Justin Bozeman says, I'm still not convinced that Eli Holstein is the answer, especially since I don't know if the coordinator can make adjustments. Well, that's two different things, right? It's 2 different things. Jeff Shimonsky says they were not good without Eli Holstein and their left tackle. Yeah, I agree about that. Let's see. Just trying to scroll through here. It's a lot of you guys, a lot of people making the same comments and whatnot. What you guys we've heard from already. I mean, look. All right. Here, I'm just going to scroll to the bottom. If you want to make sure your comment gets read, of course, you can always be a super chatter. You guys are going back and forth. It seems like talking to each other a lot, which I appreciate. M. Ryan says, do you think we should fire our offensive line coach? Those tackles were so unprepared. I don't care how far down the depth chart they are. I don't think anybody is going to I don't think anybody's going to get fired this offseason. We can't rule anything out. Anything is possible. Certainly, Pat Narduzzi likes to, I don't know if he likes to, but Pat Narduzzi makes a lot of changes on his coaching staff. We know that. And so I don't think Jeremy Darveau should get fired after 1 year, but I think he's got a real task in front of him. Like, he needs to get better play out of this offensive line because they weren't good this year. And even when, this is one of the things we'll probably say a lot this offseason. Like, even before Branson Taylor got hurt, even before Ryan Jacoby got hurt, even before they were shuffling guys around and moving guys to different spots on the offensive line, like, they weren't all that good to begin with. They were just okay in the first 5 games or however long it was before Taylor got hurt. Like, they were kind of porous. So, like, there was something lacking there from the start, and part of that's on talent. Part of that's on the roster and the players and the personnel and all of that. But Jeremy Darveau needs to do a better job with that group as well. Like, he needs to improve. He needs to get better play out of the offensive linemen. And they need to take some steps forward. They're going to have guys back next year, returning starters. And ideally, they'll add experienced players on the offensive line to step into some starting roles and give this unit give this team a serviceable offensive line unit. But if they do that, if they bring in some quality transfers and they return a couple of the key returning starters, then the pressure is going to be on Darveau. He's going to have to get a better performance out of his position group next year than he got this year. Let's see. Nico P says next year's schedule looks brutal. Any idea if Reed is thinking of going pro? So I actually, I said that earlier when somebody asked why Desmond Reed didn't travel with the team to Boston College for this game. And I said, well, it's health related. He was hurt. He got banged up against Louisville. And so he wasn't going to be available for the game. Guys who are not available to play due to injury don't travel. So that's, that's sort of expected. I do think he'll probably consider the pro route. I think if you looked at what is most likely for Desmond Reed for next season, I would say the least likely outcome is he transfers to another school is my guess. I have no idea. I don't have any insight on this at all. I think it's probably the least likely outcome that he transfers. I would say it's probably more likely that he either comes back to Pitt or goes and tries to get in the NFL. I think if Desmond Reed looks at it and says, I don't need to take another year of beating and pounding at the college level, I'll go to the NFL and get some NFL money. I think that makes sense. I think it would be a real blow for Pitt because he was, their best offensive skill player. Probably, I would say their second best overall player behind Kyle Lewis. Right there in the top 2 or 3, along with Lewis and I still think Rasheem Biles, but probably number 2 behind Lewis, if not number 1 ahead of Lewis. I mean, he's right around there. He was really good and a revelation for Pitt. And it's unfortunate that as the season progressed and defenses adjusted and Pitt's offense started to struggle, that Reed's production fell off. It's unfortunate. I don't think it's a reflection on him because I think he's a really sensational player. One of the more exciting players we've seen at Pitt over the years. It's just disappointing that between injuries and the offensive line issues and the overall offensive struggles, it's disappointing that he was not able to keep up that level of production as the season went on. But he was really good. So yeah, I would have to think he's considering the pros for next season. We're coming up on an hour and a half. I feel like that might be enough. Look, it sucks to lose 5 games in a row. There's no question about it. It's the first 5-game losing streak of the Narduzzi era. It's pretty unfortunate that you're in year 10 and you lose 5 games in a row. And it's even worse after starting the season 7-0. There's no question about that. It's like the 7-0 start. It was a climb. You know what I mean? And every win they got higher and higher. So when you eventually do lose, the fall is even greater, and if you keep losing, you lose 5 in a row, the collapse is even steeper and more painful. And that's where Pitt's at right now. A pretty painful spot after a season that seems so promising and so, promising is the best word. It seemed like it was going to be special. It seemed like it was going to be a special season where Pitt was going to be in the conversation for the college football playoffs, potential return trip to Charlotte to play in the ACC championship game again. I mean, that's what they were headed for. And then they lost 1, and then they lost 2, and 3, and 4, and 5. And that's a pretty disappointing way to go. And I think there are a lot of questions to answer for the coaches, for the players, for everyone behind closed doors to figure out what happened, why it happened, and how they're going to take steps, how it's not going to happen next year, how they're going to be better next year. And I think they can. I think there's a path for Pitt to be better next season, but they've got to get the right players out of the transfer portal, and they have to bring the right guys back. Pitt Edits H2P says, please do mine. Wants to know, how do you feel about Zach Austin game-winning shot against Ohio State? I mean, it was awesome. It was awesome. It was an unbelievable moment. An unbelievable moment. No question about it. It was a heck of a start to the weekend. It was a heck of a way for a Friday afternoon. A heck of a thing to see on a Friday afternoon. It's unfortunate the football team couldn't carry it over because you had Zach Austin in the game-winning shot to beat Ohio State on the road. You had the Pitt volleyball team clinching the ACC championship. They're going to be a number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament, which starts next week. And then you had the football team. And they couldn't get it done. For the 5th game in a row. Couldn't get it done. All right, we will, lots to talk about this week on the Morning Pit all week long. every day of the week. We have the morning pit videos. We'll have our live stream on Wednesday night. We'll probably do a signing day morning live stream. We've done those in the past, usually around 10 a.m. or so. I'll give you the details on that as we get closer. But signing day is on Wednesday, so make sure you are ready for that. Listen, thanks everybody for tuning into these post-game shows all season. I appreciate it. All the super chatters and everything like that. You guys are great. It's been a lot of fun. I appreciate everybody hanging out today. But we'll have some basketball post-game shows too. We'll talk a little Pitt hoops throughout the season, probably just after road games, but we will do it. So thank you for your time. Make sure you like this video and subscribe to youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Yeah, I think that's... I knew I had to tell you one more quick thing, okay? Home field apparel, or not, oh my God. I can't believe I said home field. This is backfield, people. Backfield. We're losing it. We're losing it. Cut this. Start again. Backshore. Backshore Apparel has revamped the trucker hat, guys. A modern twist on a classic favorite. Our innovative laser-cut hats are crafted from moisture-wicking fabrics, ensuring they are lightweight and breathable. Experience the ultimate durability and the unique floating feature when you select a Backshore hat. In addition, the hats, Backshore Beach Tech hoodies, and t-shirts are the perfect combination of style and functionality. They're crafted with flex fabrics to keep you cool and thinking of warmer weather. The breathable material ensures you feel fresh all day long, while the stain-resistant protection keeps your hoodie looking new for longer. And let's not forget how incredibly soft they are. Mike is the owner and the founder of Backshore Apparel. He's an Alliance 412 member. He's a Pitt grad in the year 2000. And right now he's giving Panther-Lair members a Black Friday sale. Use the code BF20 for 20% off at backshoreapparel.com. Go over there and do it. Come on, backshoreapparel.com, promo code BF20 for 20% off. Thanks to Mike for supporting the podcast. Thanks for you for watching. Like this video and subscribe. I'm going to go have some lemon tea or something because my voice is completely shot. Have a good night. We'll talk to you on Monday morning for the morning pit right here, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.